The recovery team still hasn't found all the pieces. The immense shadow of galactic prosperity fell across Homestead 7, casting the agricultural vessel into a momentary twilight. Rebecca Torres watched from the viewport of her primary hydroponics bay as the administrative behemoth approached. Its gleaming exterior a stark contrast to the weathered, functional aesthetic of her ship. She wiped soil from her hands onto her canvas pants and sighed. "They're early," she muttered, glancing at the enormous form sprawled across the nutrient-rich soil beds. "Big Jim, wake up. Company's coming." The creature stirred, 2 tons of densely packed muscle rising from its resting place among the sweet potato vines. Big Jim's massive head turned toward Rebecca, intelligent eyes focusing with unmistakable recognition. His jowls pulled back in what anyone from Earth would recognize as a smile, revealing teeth the size of Rebecca's forearm. "That's my good boy," she said, reaching up to scratch behind one of his ears, which required her to stand on tiptoe despite being nearly 6 feet tall herself. "We've got inspectors coming. Behave yourself, okay?" Big Jim's tail as thick as a support beam wagged once, thumping against a water recycling unit hard enough to dent the metal. Rebecca had inherited Big Jim from her grandfather, who had been part of the early Earth evacuation projects. The official paperwork listed him as a Class C modified Terran canine, Canis familiaris. But anyone with functioning eyesight could see that Big Jim had outgrown his classification decades ago. The Torres family had always managed to keep inspectors at bay through a combination of remote homesteading, strategic bribes, and the simple fact that most bureaucrats preferred not to board vessels containing animals bred on what the galactic community had classified as a death world. The communication panel by the door chimed. "Homestead 7, this is Galactic Prosperity. Prepare for docking and inspection under Galactic Agricultural Code 7 Alpha 9. Compliance is mandatory." Rebecca sighed again. Acknowledged. Prosperity. "Docking Bay 3 is prepped and ready." She turned to Big Jim, who had risen to his full height, his back nearly brushing the 10-foot ceiling. "Time to play nice with the suits, Jimmy." The Pitbull's ancestors had been bred as companion animals, then working dogs, and finally as status symbols back on Earth. When humanity began its exodus to the stars, genetic modification became not just accepted but necessary. Earth animals, adapted to the punishing gravity and harsh conditions of humanity's birthplace, offered certain advantages in the frontier of space. Big Jim was the result of generations of careful breeding and genetic tweaking, a creature that combined the loyalty and intelligence of canines with strength that rivaled industrial machinery. The problem was that Rebecca's grandfather had been more creative with his modifications than the Galactic Agricultural Authority typically allowed. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that reverberated through the ship. Rebecca straightened her shirt. A faded blue garment with "Earth, you don't know what you're missing" emblazoned across the front, and headed toward the docking bay. Big Jim padding along beside her. "Remember," she whispered to the enormous dog, "sit when I tell you, stay calm and no slobbering on the officials. That Velian last time still hasn't forgiven us." Big Jim huffed, a sound like air escaping a pressure valve. The airlock cycled open to reveal 2 figures. The first was tall and thin, with the characteristic blue-tinted skin of a Zartar. He wore the immaculate gray uniform of the Galactic Agricultural Authority, adorned with so many badges and insignia that Rebecca wondered how he remained upright under their weight. "Inspector Zartar," the figure announced, emphasizing the K sound in a way that instantly grated on Rebecca's nerves. "Chief Compliance Officer, Sector 7. The second figure was shorter, with 4 arms and large, curious eyes. A Velian. Rebecca realized a species known for their meticulous attention to detail and eidetic memory. Perfect bureaucratic assistance, Inquip, the Velian said simply, all four hands already manipulating a complex scanning device. Rebecca forced a smile. Welcome aboard Homestead 7. I'm Captain Rebecca Torres. This is my agricultural vessel, and we're fully prepared for your inspection. Inspector Zartar's eyes, however, weren't on Rebecca but fixed firmly on Big Jim, who sat obediently at her side, his massive head level with Zartar's chest despite being in a seated position. What, Zartar said slowly, is that? Rebecca patted Big Jim's flank. This is Big Jim. He's classified under my permit as a Class C modified Terran canine. All his documentation is in order. Quip was already scanning, the device in his upper right hand emitting a soft blue light that played over Big Jim's form. The Velian's eyes widened incrementally with each passing second. Inspector, Quip said, voice hushed. The biometric scan indicates significant deviations from standard Class C parameters. Zartar's posture stiffened further, if that was even possible. Explain. Quip's lower left hand tapped rapidly on a data pad. The specimen exceeds size limitations by approximately 1/700%. Muscle density exceeds galactic military-grade bioweapon standards. Bite force calculated at sufficient strength to penetrate light starship hull plating, and, Zartar prompted when Quip hesitated. And intelligence scans indicate cognitive function well beyond Class C authorization. This creature's neural patterns more closely resemble a Class A sentient species than a companion animal. Rebecca stepped forward. He's just a dog, a big one, sure, but he's been in my family for generations. He helps with the heavy lifting around the ship, keeps pests under control, and provides security. Nothing outside normal agricultural operations. Zartar's hand moved to the tablet at his side, fingers dancing across the surface. According to GAA regulations, any creature exceeding its classification parameters by more than 200% is subject to immediate confiscation and evaluation. Rebecca felt her heart sink. There must be some mistake. Big Jim is harmless unless provoked. He's essential to my operation here. The regulations are clear. Captain Torres. Zartar's voice was cold, detached. The creature will be remanded to GAA custody for evaluation and possible recategorization or, if necessary, disposal. The word disposal hung in the air between them. Big Jim. As if sensing the tension, rose to his feet, the movement fluid and controlled despite his enormous size. Rebecca placed a steadying hand on his neck. He's not just some creature, she said, fighting to keep her voice level. He's family. He protects my ship, my crops, my livelihood. You can't just take him. Quip shifted uncomfortably, all four arms now clutching the scanning device defensively. Captain Torres, Zartar said. I understand your attachment, but the regulations exist for the safety of all galactic citizens. A biological entity of this magnitude, particularly one from Earth, presents an unacceptable risk. Rebecca stood her ground. He stays with me. If you want to update his classification, fine. Send me the paperwork. I'll pay whatever fees are necessary. But he's not leaving this ship. Zartar's expression didn't change, but his hand moved to the communication device on his wrist. This is Inspector Zartar requesting Enforcement Team Alpha to Docking Bay 3 of Homestead 7. We have a Class 4 non-compliant situation involving an unclassified Earth biological. Rebecca felt Big Jim tense beside her, the muscles beneath his short coat bunching like steel cables. She squeezed his neck gently, a silent command to stay calm. This is unnecessary, she said. We can resolve this administratively. The time for administrative solutions passed when you failed to report these modifications. Zartar replied. The creature will be secured and transported to galactic prosperity for proper evaluation. Quip, still scanning, suddenly made a small sound of surprise. Inspector, I'm detecting anomalies in the digestive and skeletal systems as well. The creature appears to have a secondary stomach designed for processing metallic compounds and bone density comparable to industrial ceramics. Zartar's eyes narrowed. What exactly have you created here, Captain Torres? I didn't create anything, Rebecca said firmly. Big Jim is the result of generations of breeding and adaptation. My grandfather was a geneticist who believed Earth animals could thrive in space with the right modifications. He's no different from the thousands of other modified species throughout the galaxy, except for the fact that he could tear through a bulkhead if he wanted to. Zartar said dryly. The airlock behind them cycled open again, and 6 figures in armored environmental suits entered, each carrying restraint equipment and what Rebecca recognized as high-powered tranquilizer weapons. Enforcement Team Alpha reporting as ordered. Inspector. The lead figure announced, voice slightly distorted through the suit's communication system. Zartar gestured toward Big Jim. Secure the biological entity for transport. Use maximum restraints. The team moved forward with practiced efficiency, deploying a perimeter of energy restraints designed to contain creatures many times stronger than standard humanoids. Rebecca stepped between them and Big Jim. This is my ship, and you have no right to confiscate my property without due process. I demand to speak with your superior. Your objection is noted, Zartar said unmoved. Please step aside or you will be temporarily detained as well. Big Jim growled, a sound so deep it seemed to vibrate through the metal deck plating. The enforcement team hesitated, their formation faltering momentarily. Sir, one of them said, the standard restraints may be insufficient for an entity of this size and strength. Zartar frowned. Apply a Class 3 sedative first, then proceed with the restraints. Rebecca felt panic rising. No, his metabolism processes sedatives differently that you could kill him. But the team was already moving, the lead officer raising a long pneumatic injector designed to penetrate thick hide or scales. With a hiss of compressed air, a dart shot forward, embedding itself in Big Jim's shoulder. For a moment, nothing happened. Big Jim looked at the dart with what could only be described as annoyance, then turned his massive head toward Rebecca. I'm sorry, buddy, she whispered. I should have been more careful. The lead officer was checking his equipment. Sedative deployed. Effect should be immediate. Zartar nodded. Proceed with restraints. The team moved forward with the energy restraints, a network of glowing blue lines designed to contract around the target and render it immobile. Just as they prepared to activate the system, Big Jim shook himself. A casual, everyday motion that a dog might make after getting wet. The dart flew from his hide, clattering against the wall. Impossible, breathed the lead officer. That was enough sedative to drop a Jovian mammoth. Big Jim turned his attention to the restraint team, and Rebecca saw something change in his posture. The casual, relaxed companion was gone, replaced by something more primitive, more focused, his muscles bunched beneath his coat, and before anyone could react, he moved. For something so large, Big Jim's speed was shocking. One moment he was standing beside Rebecca. The next, he had covered the 15 feet to the restraint team in a single bound. His massive jaws closed around the restraint system. Metal and energy components crunching between teeth evolved to process the most unforgiving materials Earth had to offer. The team scattered, training abandoned in the face of 2 tons of Earth predator. Zartar stumbled backward, colliding with Quip, who dropped the scanner with a clatter. Activate shock protocols, Zartar shouted, fumbling for his communication device. One of the team members managed to deploy a shock net, the crackling energy field expanding toward Big Jim. The Pitbull didn't flinch. Instead, he charged directly into the net, the energy discharging across his body in a cascade of blue sparks. He didn't slow down. His hide is insulated, Rebecca called out, a note of pride in her voice despite the situation. Adaptation for space conditions. Electricity doesn't bother him much. The enforcement team was in full retreat now, backing toward the airlock. Big Jim positioned himself between them and Rebecca, his stance protective, a low continuous growl emanating from deep in his chest. Zartar had recovered his composure and was barking orders into his communication device. Full containment protocol, seal all connections between Homestead 7 and Prosperity. Deploy security teams to all potential breach points. Rebecca placed a hand on Big Jim's back. Stand down, Jim. Let's talk this through. But the moment for talking seemed to have passed. Big Jim's eyes were fixed on the enforcement team, tracking their every movement as they retreated through the airlock. As the heavy doors began to close, he made his move. With explosive power, Big Jim launched himself forward, clearing the closing gap with inches to spare. Rebecca heard shouts of alarm from the other side, followed by crashes and the distinctive sound of metal being torn. "No!" she cried, running to the airlock controls. "Jim, come back!" But the system was already cycling into lockdown mode, the interface flashing red with security protocols initiated from the Prosperity side. Zartar stared at the sealed airlock, his blue complexion noticeably paler. "Do you have any idea what you've done? That creature is loose on an administrative vessel with over 12,000 personnel." Rebecca turned on him, anger flaring. "What I've done? You tried to take him from his home. Of course he's going to defend himself." "That animal is a catastrophic security risk," Zartar hissed. "If anyone is harmed, he won't hurt anyone unless they threaten him." Rebecca interrupted. "But he will tear your ship apart looking for a way back to me." As if to punctuate her statement, a distant alarm began to sound from within Prosperity, followed by another, then another, creating a cacophony of warning signals. Quip, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. "Inspector, we're receiving reports of a large animal moving through Deck 7 heading toward the central administrative sector." Zartar's expression shifted from anger to concern. "How is that possible? Deck 7 is 6 levels up from this docking port." Rebecca couldn't help but smile slightly. "He's smarter than you think, and he can jump, really, really well." The communication panel on the wall of the docking bay lit up, displaying the harried face of a Prosperity officer. "Inspector Zartar, the Earth Biological has breached the ventilation system. It's using the maintenance tunnels to move between decks." Zartar's jaw clenched. "Deploy all available security teams, authorization for maximum non-lethal force." The officer's eyes widened. "Sir, it's already disabled 2 security teams. The standard issue restraints are ineffective, and it appears to be." The officer paused, looking down at something off-screen. "Sir, it appears to be selectively targeting our electrical systems." Rebecca crossed her arms. "He doesn't like being separated from me. And he's very good at finding the fastest way to create leverage." Zartar turned to her, fury and disbelief warring in his expression. "Call it off. Now." "He's not an it," Rebecca corrected. "And I would if I could, but your security protocols have cut off all communication between our ships." She gestured to the locked-down airlock. "The only way to stop this is to let me go to him." Quip, still monitoring reports coming through on his data pad, looked up with alarm. "Inspector, the creature has reached the primary power distribution hub for the administrative levels. Damage reports are coming in from multiple sections." A new voice cut through the communication panel, deep and authoritative. "This is Admiral Kethv. What in the 7 moons of Praxis is happening on my ship?" Zartar straightened reflexively. "Admiral, we have a situation involving an unclassified Earth biological that escaped during a routine confiscation." "Routine?" Rebecca interrupted. You tried to steal my dog. Admiral Kethvy's stern face filled the screen, eyes narrowing as they took in the situation. Inspector, explain why half my ship is experiencing power fluctuations and why I have reports of a monster in the ventilation system. Before Zartar could respond, a tremendous crash sounded through the communication system, followed by shouts and the unmistakable sound of Big Jim's bark, sound that could be felt as much as heard. Admiral Kethvy's image shook, the Admiral looking away from the camera. It's in the command deck antechamber. Seal all doors to the bridge. Rebecca stepped forward. Admiral, my name is Rebecca Torres, captain of Homestead 7. The monster is my dog, Big Jim. He's not dangerous unless threatened, but he will continue to cause disruption until he can return to me. The Admiral's expression was incredulous. That thing is a dog? A modified Pitbull, Rebecca confirmed. Bred for space conditions and agricultural work. He's loyal, intelligent, and right now very upset about being separated from me. Another crash came through the speakers, this one closer to the Admiral's location. The outer doors are buckling, someone off-screen reported anxiously. Admiral Kethvy's expression hardened. Ms. Torres, I suggest you find a way to control your dog before I'm forced to take more permanent measures. Rebecca felt a chill run through her. Don't threaten him. You'll only make it worse. Let me come aboard and call him off. The Admiral and Zartar exchanged looks through the communication system. The confiscation order stands, Zartar insisted. The creature is clearly dangerous and well beyond its classification parameters. A third crash interrupted them, followed by the sound of tearing metal. The Admiral's image shook violently. It's through the first set of doors, someone shouted. Admiral Kethvy made a decision. Override the docking bay security. Bring Torres to the command deck immediately. Zartar began to protest, but the Admiral cut him off. Now, Inspector, before that animal reaches the bridge and we lose control of the entire ship. The airlock security protocols disengaged with a series of beeps, the interface shifting from red to green. Rebecca didn't wait for further invitation, heading straight for the opening doors. I'm coming, Jim, she called out, hoping her voice would carry through the ship's communication system. The scene that greeted her on the other side of the airlock was one of controlled chaos. The sleek, sterile corridors of galactic prosperity were now marked with massive paw prints, dented wall panels, and the occasional sparking electrical system. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow, and personnel rushed in all directions, some carrying equipment, others simply fleeing. Quip followed close behind her, all four arms clutching various devices while Zartar brought up the rear, his earlier confidence notably diminished. This way, Quip directed, leading them toward a large central lift. The command deck is 30 levels up. The creature, Big Jim has disabled most of the regular lifts, but the emergency system should still be functional. As if on cue, the lights in the corridor flickered, then went out entirely, leaving only the dim emergency strips along the floor. He's hit the secondary power grid, Zartar muttered. How does it even know which systems to target? Rebecca didn't bother explaining that Big Jim had grown up on spaceships, watching her and her family maintain and repair systems, or that Earth dogs had been working alongside humans for thousands of years, learning to read intentions and anticipate needs. Some things the bureaucrats would never understand. They reached the emergency lift, which, thankfully, was still operational. As they ascended, Rebecca felt the vibrations of distant impacts through the walls of the lift. He's moving upward through the ship, she noted, heading straight for the command deck, and he's tracking me. Zartar's expression was a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. How? We're in a sealed lift shaft. Rebecca shrugged. Smell, probably. Earth creatures have senses you wouldn't believe. and he knows my patterns where I'd likely be taken on a ship this size. The lift slowed as they approached the command deck, and the doors opened to reveal a scene of frantic activity. Officers rushed about, reporting damage from various sections of the ship, while security personnel established defensive positions around the main bridge entrance. Admiral Kethav stood in the center of it all, a tall, imposing figure with the characteristic ridged forehead of the Proxima species. The Admiral's attention was focused on a reinforced door at the far end of the antechamber, which was visibly bulging inward. "Torres," the Admiral acknowledged without turning. "I hope you can control your pet better than my security teams." Rebecca moved forward, ignoring the stares and murmurs from the Prosperity crew. "He's not attacking your people, is he? Just your ship." The Admiral's mouth tightened. "Small comfort when he's tearing through vital systems. We've lost navigation, half our communication array, and the entire quartermaster's department is flooded because he ruptured a water recycling main." A tremendous impact shook the reinforced door, causing several officers to flinch back. The metal was now visibly cracked along one seam. "He's almost through," someone reported unnecessarily. Rebecca stepped forward, positioning herself between the security team and the buckling door. "Tell your people to lower their weapons. If he sees me threatened, this will get much worse." Admiral Keth hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Stand down. Weapons at rest." The security personnel lowered their restraint devices reluctantly, eyes never leaving the door as it shuddered under another massive impact. Jim," Rebecca called out. "Jim, it's me. I'm here, boy." The pounding paused. A deep, rumbling sound came from beyond the door, not quite a growl, but a questioning vocalization. "It's okay," Rebecca continued, her voice softer now. "I'm safe. No one's going to hurt me." A moment of silence followed, then a different sound, a scrabbling, searching noise, as if something large was investigating the edges of the door. "He's looking for the control mechanism," Rebecca explained to the watching officers. "You might want to just open it before he finds his own way through." Admiral Keth gestured to a nearby officer, who reluctantly activated the door release. The damaged portal slid partially open, jammed by the earlier impacts, creating a gap about 3 feet wide. A massive head pushed through immediately, jaws powerful enough to crush metal. Eyes intelligent and alert, scanning the room until they locked onto Rebecca. Big Jim's entire demeanor changed in an instant, the aggressive protector melting away to reveal the loyal companion. He squeezed his enormous body through the gap, moving with surprising grace for something so large, and bounded directly to Rebecca. Several officers scrambled out of the way as 2 tons of muscle and loyalty rushed past them. Rebecca stood her ground, arms outstretched. Big Jim skidded to a stop before her, then gently pressed his massive head against her chest, nearly knocking her over despite his attempt at restraint. "I missed you too, buddy," she said, scratching behind his ears as if he were a normal-sized dog who hadn't just devastated a significant portion of one of the largest administrative vessels in the galaxy. The room was silent, every officer and administrator staring in disbelief at the interaction between woman and beast. Big Jim was now sitting obediently at Rebecca's side, his tail capable of denting metal wagging gently against the floor. Admiral Keth approached cautiously. "This is the dangerous creature that disabled 12 security teams and caused damage to 27 decks?" Rebecca kept one hand on Big Jim's head. "He was just trying to find me. He gets anxious when we're separated." Zartar, who had maintained a safe distance, finally found his voice. "Admiral, regardless of its current behavior, this creature is in clear violation of multiple classification statutes. The confiscation order remains valid." Big Jim's ears flattened slightly, his massive body tensing at Zartar's voice. Rebecca gave him a reassuring pat. "Perhaps," Admiral Keth said slowly. We should reconsider the situation. Admiral, Zartar protested, the regulations are clear. The regulations, the Admiral interrupted, did not anticipate a situation where a supposedly non-sentient creature could outsmart our security systems, navigate a complex ship structure, and selectively disable critical infrastructure all without causing a single serious injury to my crew. The Admiral turned to Rebecca. Your dog, he was careful not to harm anyone. Rebecca nodded. He's protective, not aggressive. He used enough force to move obstacles, including people, out of his way, but he wouldn't deliberately hurt someone unless they were threatening me directly. Admiral Keith V studied Big Jim with new interest. A remarkable level of restraint and judgment for a creature classified as non-sentient. Quip, who had been analyzing data throughout the confrontation, stepped forward tentatively. Admiral, my scans indicate cognitive patterns consistent with high-order problem-solving and emotional intelligence. The creature Big Jimmy represent an evolutionary branch not fully documented in GAA records. That's because Earth bureaucrats aren't much better than galactic ones. Rebecca said, back home, they classified pitbulls as dangerous animals in many regions, despite evidence that they were no more dangerous than any other large breed when properly raised. My grandfather saw potential in them that others overlooked. Admiral Keth circled Big Jim slowly, maintaining a respectful distance. The enormous dog tracked the Admiral's movement but remained seated, his posture alert but non-threatening. Inspector Zartar, the Admiral said finally. Prepare documentation for a classification review. In the meantime, the confiscation order is suspended. Zartar's blue complexion darkened with frustration. Admiral, with all due respect, suspending established protocol based on one incident sets a dangerous precedent. Look around you, Inspector. Admiral Kethvi gestured to the damaged door, the flickering lights, the reports still coming in from throughout the ship. The precedent was set when a Class C biological outmaneuvered our entire security apparatus. The protocols have already failed. The Admiral turned back to Rebecca. Captain Torres, I trust you can remove your companion from my ship without further incident? Rebecca smiled, relief washing over her. Yes, Admiral, he'll follow me peacefully now. Oh, good. The Admiral's tone was firm but not unkind. And I trust you understand that this matter is not closed. There will be a full review of Big Jim's classification, and appropriate measures will need to be taken to ensure compliance with whatever new category is established. Rebecca nodded. I understand. And I'm willing to work with the GAA to find a solution that recognizes what he is without separating us. Big Jim leaned against her leg, nearly toppling her with his immense weight, his eyes never leaving the Admiral. Very well. Admiral Keth turned to the bridge officers. Escort Captain Torres and her companion. Back to Homestead 7, Inspector Zartar. You will prepare a full report for the Galactic Agricultural Authority Council, including recommendations for a new classification category. Zartar looked as if he might protest further, but a warning glance from the Admiral silenced him. He gave a stiff nod, then gestured for Quip to follow as he departed, carefully giving Big Jim a wide berth. As Rebecca and Big Jim made their way back through the ship, escorted by a nervous security detail, she couldn't help but notice the mix of fear and fascination on the faces of the Prosperity crew. Many had never seen an Earth animal before, much less one that had single-handedly defeated their security systems. One young officer, braver than the rest, approached carefully. Is it true he can understand speech? Complex commands? Rebecca smiled, patting Big Jim's flank. He understands more than most people give him credit for. Earth dogs evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. They learn to read our emotions, anticipate our needs. The genetic modifications just enhanced abilities that were already there. The officer studied Big Jim with wonder. I've never seen anything like him. Earth is full of surprises, Rebecca said. That's why they call it a death world. The journey back to Homestead 7 was uneventful. Big Jim padding contentedly at Rebecca's side, occasionally sniffing at interesting scents or marking territorial boundaries with casual disregard for the pristine corridors of galactic prosperity. When they finally reached the airlock connecting to her ship, Rebecca turned to the security detail. Thank you for the escort. I hope repairs go smoothly. The lead officer gave a respectful nod, eyes still warily tracking Big Jim. The Admiral has requested that you remain docked until the preliminary classification review is complete. It shouldn't take more than a standard cycle. Rebecca agreed, then led Big Jim through the airlock back onto Homestead 7. The moment they were alone, she dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around his massive neck. You caused quite a scene back there, buddy, she murmured into his short coat. But I'm proud of you. You found me, and you didn't hurt anyone doing it. Big Jim's response was to lick her face with a tongue the size of a dinner plate, nearly knocking her over in the process. Rebecca laughed, wiping her face. Let's get you some food. Tearing apart a starship must work up an appetite. 3 days later. Rebecca stood in the primary hydroponics bay, watching as Big Jim sniffed curiously at the small delegation that had arrived from galactic prosperity. Admiral Kethv led the group, accompanied by Quip and, surprisingly, Inspector Zartar, whose posture seemed slightly less rigid than before. Captain Torres, the Admiral greeted her formally. We've completed the preliminary review of your companion's classification status. Rebecca straightened, trying to read the Admiral's expression. And Admiral Kethv handed her a data pad. The Galactic Agricultural Authority Council has established a new classification specifically for Big Jim, with provisions for similar Earth-derived companions that may exist in other parts of the galaxy. Rebecca skimmed the document, her eyes widening as she took in the details. The Big Jim classification? You named a whole category after him? The Admiral's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. It seemed appropriate, given the circumstances. The new classification recognizes enhanced biological entities with demonstrated intelligence, emotional bonds to their handlers, and protective capabilities. Zartar stepped forward, his earlier hostility notably diminished. The classification includes strict guidelines for training, containment during interstellar transit, and regular evaluation. But it also acknowledges the bond between handler and companion as a factor in behavioral stability. Rebecca looked up from the datapad, surprised. This is remarkably reasonable. Quip beamed, all 4 hands clasped together. I provided extensive data on Big Jim's cognitive patterns and social behaviors. The evidence was quite compelling. Admiral Kethv gestured around the hydroponics bay. Your companion has demonstrated both exceptional abilities and exceptional restraint. The Council agreed that such creatures represent a unique category, neither purely utility animals nor full sentience, but something worthy of special consideration. Big Jim, seemingly aware that he was the topic of conversation, sat down beside Rebecca, his massive head level with her shoulder even in this position. There will, of course, be additional documentation required, Zartar added, unable to completely abandon his bureaucratic nature, and regular inspections to ensure compliance with the new standards. Rebecca nodded, still somewhat stunned by the outcome. Of course. We'll cooperate fully. Admiral Kethv studied Big Jim with thoughtful eyes. Your grandfather's work was ahead of its time, Captain Torres. Perhaps there is more we can learn from Earth's adaptations than we previously believed. As the delegation prepared to depart, Zartar lingered behind, approaching Rebecca with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Captain Torres," he began formally, "I wish to acknowledge that my initial assessment of your companion was incomplete. The GAA's purpose is to ensure the safe integration of biological entities throughout the galaxy, not merely to enforce regulations for their own sake." Rebecca smiled. "That's very generous of you, Inspector." Zartar glanced at Big Jim, who was watching him with intelligent eyes. "The incident has prompted a broader review of our classification system. It seems Earth biology continues to challenge our understanding in unexpected ways. Earth has been challenging life for billions of years," Rebecca said. "Everything that survives there does so because it adapted to some of the harshest conditions in the galaxy. It makes us tough and loyal to those who help us survive." Zartar nodded slowly, then rejoined the delegation as they returned to Prosperity. Once they were gone, Rebecca sat down beside Big Jim in the soft soil of the hydroponics bay, leaning against his warm, solid presence. "Well, buddy, it looks like we're legitimate now," she said, scratching his favorite spot behind his left ear. "No more hiding from inspectors or fudging the paperwork." Big Jim huffed contentedly, resting his massive head on his paws. Rebecca looked out the viewport at the gleaming bulk of galactic prosperity, now bearing visible evidence of Big Jim's journey through its corridors. Engineers in spacesuits worked on external repairs, tiny figures against the enormous administrative vessel. "You know," she mused, "I think you might have done the galaxy a favor. Sometimes bureaucracy needs a good shake-up to remember what it's really supposed to be protecting." Big Jim's tail thumped against the deck plating in agreement, and Rebecca smiled, watching as the first rays of a distant sun broke over the curve of the nearby planet, illuminating both ships in the golden light of a new day. In the months that followed, the Big Jim classification became a topic of discussion throughout the galaxy. Other Earth emigrants came forward with their own modified companions, creatures that had been kept hidden from official records for fear of confiscation. The Galactic Agricultural Authority, under the watchful eye of Admiral Kethv, who had developed an unexpected interest in Earth biology, established new protocols that recognized the unique bond between handlers and their companions. Rebecca found herself in demand as a consultant, her understanding of Earth animals and their adaptations to space conditions suddenly valuable in official circles. She accepted these new responsibilities with grace, though she insisted on continuing her agricultural work aboard Homestead 7. Big Jim, for his part, seemed unaffected by his newfound fame. He continued his daily routines patrolling the hydroponics bays, assisting with heavy lifting, and sprawling across Rebecca's bed despite taking up most of the available space. The only difference was that now, when they docked at stations or larger vessels, he was met not with fear and suspicion but with cautious respect. One evening, as Homestead 7 drifted through a quiet sector of space, Rebecca sat with Big Jim in the observation dome, watching stars drift past. "You know," she said, running her fingers through his short coat. "Grandfather always said that the bond between humans and dogs was one of Earth's greatest achievements. Not the technology, not the cities, but the fact that two different species chose to evolve together, to become better through partnership." Big Jim looked up at her with those intelligent eyes, a connection spanning thousands of years of shared evolution. "I think he'd be proud of us," Rebecca continued softly. "Not just for standing our ground, but for helping them understand." Big Jim's response was to press his massive head against her side, a gesture of affection that nearly toppled her from her seat. Rebecca laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Yeah, I love you too, buddy. Even if you did demolish half of galactic prosperity to prove it." Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the complexities of bureaucracy and the unexpected strength of bonds forged on a distant death world called Earth.